welcome to the Hopkins Demonstration Forest. It's a beautiful Monday morning, almost noon time here, and we're going to take a hike down the Hopkins Trail and take a look inside a tree and talk about some of the different parts. Now this lesson today goes to a special call out to Robert Frost Elementary from Silverton, Oregon. They had scheduled field trips to bring all their 5th grade classes out here. And unfortunately, because of our shutdown and the coronavirus, unable to get out. So I thought I'd bring you a quick lesson about the different parts of a tree and take a quick peek inside. Please, send some comments where you're viewing this from. And if you have any questions during or after, be happy to get back to you. But we're walking down Hopkins Trail, and we're going to walk up to a already prepped Douglas fir. Most of our forest here at Hopkins is Douglas fir with some western red cedar. You take a look around, you can see a real dense understory. But I wanted to talk about right here this tree and take a look inside. So most people, when they look at a tree, the first thing they want to know is how old is it? And they look at a tree and they look at the size, they look at one next to it. But what we have is a dandy little tool called increment core, and it allows us to take a peek inside that tree. And it's got a couple parts to it. Of course, I always like to say that the color orange is rather beautiful, as well as the inside core, black, orange, go Foxes, Silverton, but also OSU beeves, can't knock them. And then it's got a third part. I'll show you how this thing works, but what we're going to do real quick is just take a peek inside this tree and see. Initially, what a lot of folks like to know is how old it is. So you might ask the question, well, how do you know how old a tree is? Well, here in Oregon and much of the Northwest, when trees grow, they put on a yearly ring. And that ring tells us every year, we count them, how old it is. So with an increment core, what we're allowed to do is take a look inside. It's kind of a fancy drill, but what we're going to do is go through some of the parts of a tree. Not just get to the center where those rings stop and go the other direction. So it takes a little bit of work. As I turn this drill bit in, I'm going through the first layer of the tree. And that first layer, you can probably guess it. Yeah, the bark. So the bark is that first layer of a tree that protects it. Keeps the good stuff in, the bad stuff out. It's a protective layer that keeps the weather, the cold, the heat, the insects. They want to get in and get at some of that good stuff that's going on inside the tree. But just as you go in through that bark, there's another layer, and it's kind of a funny name. It's called the phloem. Now you might think F-flow, F-L-O-W. No, it's actually spelled P-H-L-O-E-M. And that phloem layer, it's a thin little layer just inside the bark. It takes all the sugars and all the nutrients that are happening from photosynthesis, the sun, the air, the carbon dioxide, the water coming up from the roots, and that nutrients all combined together. It creates some sugars, and that phloem layer kind of feeds that nutrients around the tree. Now just inside that layer, tiny little bit, just almost paper thin, is another layer called the cambium. And again, cambium, C-A-M-B-I-U-M, forget my spelling right. That is actually, trees grow, they don't grow like get larger and larger from every part, they grow from the outside out, and the tops of the branches and tips of the branches out and up. So that cambium is where new cells happen. And those are some tiny thin little layers. And then we have to work a little harder to get into that fourth layer, which is called the sapwood. Now the sapwood is a layer of, it's a good chunk of wood inside, and we'll take a look at that when I pull the sample out. It pulls the nutrients and water up from the roots and takes it up through the tree and spreads it all the way up to the tops and the tips and around it to give it that drink of water that photosynthesis needs. Then after that sapwood, we get into a different wood. I know it makes a funny sound. Wood is tough. It's a great building material, renewable, but it also has some strength. And now the magic happens. That fifth layer is called the heartwood. Now that heartwood is actually, was once sapwood. It makes a good sound. But now that heartwood has become the structural support for this tree. So if we take a look at this, let's go through those layers again. So you can see the exterior, the outer first layer, the bark. There's tiny 2 layers, the phloem and the cambium. Then all the way, it's kind of difficult to see. I got a good example of a better dried out sample. See this lighter part right in here? That's the sapwood. And then we take it all the way, this kind of pinkish color to the center. You can tell it's the center, I always like to say, because it looks like a big smile when you tip it the right direction, or a frown, but the smile. So that kind of light wood is the sapwood. That's where water is flowing up. And then the heartwood, which was once that sapwood, as the tree got bigger, it died off. Now it's just the structural support. So let's quickly count the rings that we have here and see how old this tree is. I didn't ask for you to guess, but now might be a good time. You can kind of see it. I'm going to wiggle it. I'm not sure how good the camera's coming in, but we always start here at the center. We've got a good center core, and you'll notice there's some light and dark parts to those rings, and they're a little tough to see when you core it, but that light and dark color, there's 2 growing seasons. I mean, it grows all through the spring and summer here in Oregon, but those growing seasons produce a very light colored wood, especially in Douglas fir, and then a dark colored wood later on. So early, it's light. We call that early wood or spring wood. In the later part of the summer, the late wood or summer wood, as the cells start to get more compressed and the growth slows down, it creates that dark ring. So let's count them and see where we are at. So there's the center, and I'll do the best I can. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So about 20, 25 years. I might have missed one in there. But now let's keep counting. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. And if I looked really close, there might be one extra in there. So it was growing really well. And then all of a sudden it slowed down. So the question, if you look around, you know, why was this tree growing well and slowing down? And that's one of the things, actually, as foresters, we love about coring a tree. It doesn't just tell us the age, that this tree is about 35 years old. Plus, remember, it grew from a tiny little seed or was planted, so it took a couple years to get up here. So about 40 years old. But what happened around that tree? And we can really read these rings. The wider the ring, we know the tree is getting the things it needs. The 4 things plants need: the sunlight, the water, the CO2, and the soil and nutrients that it's growing in for its support and providing those nutrients. So I can assume the soil did not run away. I'm pretty certain here in Oregon, we've had consistent rain. We've had some droughts and some wetter years. The CO2 is been not in decline. So what we really had is this tree started slowing down because it had some competition of the trees around it. And if I look around, I see some trees of like size, some a little bigger. So I would assume that this tree is working, trying to win the race to get to the sunlight. So we can really tell a lot by a core sample. It's not just the age of the tree, but it's different parts. But it's really, it tells us how the tree is doing. And right now, looking at this tree, it could use a little extra, probably sunlight, because it's slowing down, but it's doing pretty good for a 40-year-old Douglas fir. Now I want to show you that example over here, because I do have a couple of tree cookies. And you might ask, well, which one is older? And if you could count the rings on those, these are in between this tree. But both these trees right here are about 40 years old. The one on the left I counted really quick and I got 43. And on this one I kind of lost track on the outer edge. You can really see those light and dark ring patterns from the springwood to summerwood. You can also really see that heartwood layer in here, the sapwood layer, and that tiny little cambium and phloem layer where the new growth happens, and the bark. But right here you're looking at 3 trees, one standing. Didn't have to take a chainsaw to look inside this one, and all different sizes. And if you have to ask, yes, look at the bark. They're all 3 Douglas fir, and these all were growing right around here, and we're taking this one in a harvest as well as this one. This one's still standing. So hopefully you had a good time seeing about the different parts of a tree, and look forward to coming back to you later. Again, big shout out to Robert Frost. If you made it to the end of the video, we'd love to see where you were calling in, or not calling in from, but viewing from. And also, if you have any questions, I'll reply to them in comments. So hopefully you're having a good time there in Silverton, in the outer areas, staying safe, and hope to see you soon, and wish you could be out here this spring. But maybe I'll get the 6th grade class out here, because I know some of you came out in the fall. Most of you did, and want you back out as soon as possible. But stay safe and have a good time, and enjoy the forests as you take walks around Silverton. Thanks a lot, and see you soon.